my currency is freedom. That was my currency. I remember realizing I fundamentally have to decide. Like, it seems like all human suffering at some level comes from allowing money to be more important than it should be.
Hi, I'm Andrew. This is Human Impact, and today I'm very excited to be joined by Jeff Lerner. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Oh, Ed, I'm so glad to be here, man. I feel picking up from where we left off. What was that, a week ago? You were on my show?
It was about 10 days ago. And this time I get the opportunity to pick your brain. So that's going to be fun. For those who don't know Jeff is the CEO, the founder of ENTRE, which includes ENTRE Institute, ENTRE Ventures, which is, I think, one of the foremost entrepreneurial training and mindset training platforms on the planet. You've worked with or helped over 300,000 people to date. So it's very exciting to have you here today. I really wanted to touch on one thing right at the very beginning, okay? Just for the audience's benefit, who may or may not know you. You started your career as a jazz musician. You still play the piano every day, right? And you played for CEOs. So what was the inspiration for you to be a musician, highly creative, right? Enjoying yourself, doing your passion, to moving through the gears to where you are today? I mean, what's the driver behind that, and what's the inspiration behind that?
Well, it's really the same inspiration. So, and I'll explain the inspiration, and then I'll explain the kind of pivot point where it went from art, the creative arts, to what I'll call creative business, which is really what entrepreneurship is. It's how you create value through a business mechanism and, exchange it with the world, which is not that different than creating value through artistic expression and exchanging it with the world. One pays better than the other if you do it well, but although frankly music can pay really well too.
Not if you're Taylor Swift, no.
yeah, exactly. Then you're a whole economy if you're Taylor Swift. I think that tour is now estimated. It's going to be, I think the total aggregate economic impact is going to be like $5 to $10 billion when that tour is said and done.
I saw something out today. Yesterday it said 4.3 billion, which is phenomenal, isn't it?
That's insane. But which kind of illustrates my point, right? When you create and package value in a way that people like the way it makes them feel, you create a lot of economic upside. And I think an entrepreneurship well done, that's the entirety of what it's supposed to do. And then there's mechanisms, and there's tactics, and there's products, and there's customer journeys and all that stuff built on top. But ultimately it's about how things feel, man. That's why music and business aren't that different to me. But you ask about the motivation. I mean, the underlying motivation for me fundamentally comes down to, when you're a teenager, we all have this rebellious streak as a teenager. And depending on how your family environment was, that rebellious streak may or may not express in more or less destructive ways. And depending on other environmental factors in your life, and also just personal, personality and learned behaviors and stuff. But for me, the way my rebellious teenage spirit manifested was, first of all, I was very frustrated. I love to learn. And I was very frustrated with what a poor job I felt like school was doing of teaching me in a way that inspired and supported my love of learning. And so I took it upon myself from a pretty young age to be very self-directed in my education. And I started reading. I actually got expelled from high school my junior year. And when the truancy office, and it was for truancy, I had missed like 22 consecutive days of school. Wow. I just stopped going to school. But when the truancy officers called my house to talk to my parents and basically say, hey, when we see your son, we're going to give him a ticket for truancy. And also we're going to give you guys a ticket if you don't start making your son go back to school. They came to me and they said, well, where have you been, son? Like, what have you been doing? And I'm like, I've been at school. I don't know what they're talking about. And they're like, well, we have it on the contrary. And I said, well, yeah, I guess they never thought to look in the library. I just stopped going to class and started going to the library so I could actually read and learn some shit. Forgive me if I don't know what kind of podcast this is.
Yeah.
I wanted to learn, and I didn't have time for all this classroom nonsense with Mr. Griffiths, my pedantic Spanish teacher, lecturing us because we were supposed to, write the first sentence in black ink. This literally happened. This was like the straw that broke the camel's back for me in high school when I said, I'm no longer going to go to class. I'm just going to go learn myself in the library. Mr. Griffiths, my Spanish teacher, and I actually hope Mr. Griffiths hears this so that I can tell him how grateful I am for setting me on the road less traveled and leading me to the life less ordinary that I now have today, because you were so didactic, reductive, pathetic, and ineffective and bureaucratically insane that you made us write our English sentences in black ink and the Spanish translations in blue ink. And then when you gave it back to us, you made us write our corrections in red ink. And then ultimately you graded us on our ability to follow those instructions rather than our ability to speak Spanish. And that was when the dam broke for me. And I said, I will not be a part of this system. And so I started. Yeah. Anyway, so, I mean, but doesn't that embody the nonsense?
Yeah. I mean, there's so much in there, Jeff. And I think, French is my language, and we were taught. Actually, I was lucky from like primary school, like 6, we were taught we had a French teacher, Mademoiselle, and we learned French in French. There was no English spoken in class at all, age 6. And I think that's the way we learn languages. Learning them.
Wait, you're saying what I just described isn't the effective way to learn a language?
I don't know what you learned is an effective way to learn anything, but
it's an effective way to learn that you don't want to go to school anymore and you're willing to pursue your own education. That's what it taught me.
I think that the interesting there is the level of independence that you showed. Okay, you might call it rebelliousness, but effectively you are taking control of your destiny at like 16, saying, this doesn't work for me. I'm going to go and do something else. And it's seen as being non-traditional, non-conventional, causing trouble. You can be labeled with all these different things. You're just saying, I recognize it doesn't work. But the really interesting thing there is the degree of self-autonomy. Because if you think about that, of a 16-year-old in school today, with all of the horrible stuff that happens that we see today in schools, and the level of discipline. And if you don't do this, you can't go to college. And if you don't go to college, you can't get a job. And if you can't get a job, you can't do anything, which is a load of nonsense. But the self-autonomy to say at 16, this is not working for me. I'm going to go and study in the library. I'm not going to go to class. That's unusual.
It is, I suppose. I can see now. I mean, I have 4 kids, and 3 of them are or have been teenagers. And they've had lots of friends, and I've spent a lot of time with teenagers. And I would agree that it's unusual in practice. I don't think it's unusual in spirit. I think most young people have the drive. It's just by that time, it's already started to get beaten out of them. And for me, for whatever reason, it hadn't.
I think by 16, it's already gone. In fact, one of the biggest struggles, and this is slightly different, is I used to be a lawyer by trade a long time ago. And one of the biggest struggles is getting people from marginalized backgrounds into study law, because it's not something that they're aware of in their home environment, maybe in their cultural environment, that this is an option for a young person to go and be a professional if that's what interests you. If you're getting debate and stuff like that. And I was having a conversation with the president of the Law Society of Oxford University a few years ago, and I was going to go and give a talk there. And we're saying, they're saying, well, we need to encourage people when they get to 18. It's like, no, if they haven't understood that pathway at the age of 15 or 16, it's already too late.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so true. That's so true. Yeah. And so for me, step 1 was walking out of the classroom and into the library. And step 2 was, I was drawn to a certain type of book. Right. And a lot of it was because, and a lot of it was because I was coming out of this, what felt like oppressive, bureaucratic, sort of like Kafka-esque nonsense. And I was drawn to books about freedom and adventure and self-expression and manifestation. And so, and also institutional oppression, whether it's 1984 or Brave New World or Fahrenheit 451, of like understanding the institutional constructs that degrade the human soul over time. And then the rebellion of Ayn Rand and Atlas Shrugged with John Galt, right? And The Fountainhead with Howard Rourke, and these iconic sort of adventurer, protagonist, creator, disruptors. And I read lots of books that were all in that general genre. And I just sort of came up with this conception of like, man, I will never, my currency is freedom. That was my currency. I remember realizing I fundamentally have to decide, like, it seems like all human suffering at some level comes from allowing money to be more important than it should be in your life.
Yeah, that's interesting. And look, we have some similarity in the fact that my dad was a banker, and I understand your father's in money in the hedge funds.
Yeah, he was a money manager and an institutional investor. Yeah.
And I made the decision when I was young, I never wanted to be a banker at all, because it just seems such a tight, constrained industry, I guess. Do you think you pushed away from that? I mean, you understood the notion of wealth, obviously, right? But do you think that you pushed away from that construct?
Yeah, I did, because I mean, and for the record, I think money's amazing. Like, money is just energy packaged into like transferable units, right? I mean,
we need it.
It's production. It's productive energy packaged up and made exchangeable. Like, we need it. But it's like the things people will do for it, the compromises people will make for it. And I mean, The Fountainhead for me was the book that changed my life. I think now I would actually say I prefer Atlas Shrugged, but The Fountainhead changed my life. And reading the story of Howard Rourke, who was trying to do a very productive thing, which was build buildings. He was an architect. But he was trying to do so in a way that was fully congruent with his, I would say, God-given. Ayn Rand was an atheist and would attribute it to something else, but his innate self to express through his productive work, through the design of these great skyscrapers, and the way that the hegemony and the institutional mindset around him was constantly trying to squeeze his uniqueness out of his work. And I totally resonated with it. And that's where ultimately I ended up, after the police called my parents and said, you're going to be fined if you don't send your son back to school. My mom instead took me up to school and withdrew me and said, hey, son, you wanted out, you're out, you made your bed. What are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to become some sort of artist. I'm going to become creative. And I knew I had an aptitude for music, because I had taken some piano and guitar lessons when I was younger. And so at 16, I went full tilt into practicing piano 10, 12, 14 hours a day. In the next decade, I gave myself arthritis. I practiced so much, but I was able to have a really nice 10-year career as a professional jazz musician, self-taught from 17 years old. And then you asked the second part of the answer to your original question was about the pivot into business. It started when I realized that most of my best gigs were for this class of people called entrepreneurs that had nice homes, clearly affluence, the ability to afford to pay some young piano player $1,000 to come play piano at their house for 4 hours and serenade their guests. Those were my best gigs. They were my best paying gigs. They were also the funnest gigs. The food was the best. The environment was the most relaxed and enjoyable. And I'm like, hey, these guys kind of have the best of both worlds. They get to be creative like me, only they also know how they're going to pay their rent every month. In fact, there's no rent to pay because they own their homes. And by the way, they're very nice homes. And I wonder and that's when I started getting into entrepreneurship. So all through my 20s, I was a piano player by night. I was a college student in the mornings because I was able to get into college, even though I dropped out of high school, because another rule of the world, if you get good enough at something that is in demand, they'll actually waive a lot of the rules for you.
Yeah.
And I was good at piano, which was an in-demand thing. They had a jazz orchestra and they needed a piano player. And I ended up getting a full scholarship to college that I rode for 10 years, because that's how long it took me to get my bachelor's, as a high school dropout who dropped out to teach himself piano for 3 years. It took me 3 years to get in and be able to audition and get into the school. And then they paid for everything. Right. So it's like, I learned that the world doesn't really work the way they tell you that it works, when the reason they're telling you how it works is to get you to follow a bunch of rules that serve their interests, not yours.
Well, and there's a good example of that. So when we lived in Bali, there's a school there called the Green School, which is made from bamboo, has 75%, produces 75% of its own power from the river, has composting loos. Like it's really innovative. Al Gore is one of the sponsors. We went up there, we took the girls up there, thought, should we enroll them? But they were like 4 and 5. It was quite a lot for really little ones. Right. The point is they don't really have an academic curriculum, but every year they'll have all of the Silicon Valley lot arrive and they enroll their kids for a year to give them this different view of the world, which is about entrepreneurship, community, environment, but it doesn't really have an academic curriculum. However, so normally if you want to go to Harvard, Yale, or Princeton, or Oxford, Cambridge, you need to get, the grades from the right schools. However, they keep places available for kids from this school because they simply have a totally different view of the world, which is exactly what you're talking about. Right?
And for whatever reason, I stumbled into that worldview, and then I had the gumption to act on it, and I've been on that path ever since. And so that inflection was really just going, okay, these entrepreneurs seem to have the best of the worlds of an artist and of a business person. And I'm going to start exploring entrepreneurship. And then, to fast forward to where I am now, in 2008, so I spent about 10 years failing at a dozen different businesses. I was always undercapitalized and bootstrapped. And I mean, I literally was investing the money from the last night's tip jar into whatever the next thing was. And after about 10 years and really struggling, I was nearly homeless. I had to move out of my apartment because I couldn't pay the rent, but I was able to move in with my wife's parents. But the problem with that is my wife hated me because I was this broke, derelict musician that was not giving her the life she wanted. And frankly, I was a clumsy communicator, and I wasn't very emotionally intelligent. And I wouldn't have wanted to be married to me either back then, so I don't blame her. But I ended up moving in with her parents while we're starting to get separated and ultimately divorced. So that's all awkward and tense and weird. But so it was I was overweight. I was depressed. Like, it was this big rock bottom. I was also $500,000 in debt, by the way, because in my entrepreneurial bubble that I was building through my 20s, I would leap from failure to failure. In Churchill's words, I would leap from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm. But every time I would take a bigger and bigger risk, because that was the nature of the credit markets back then, right? By 2007, I was able to borrow hundreds of thousands of dollars to open franchise restaurants with basically no credit checks in America.
No collateral.
No collateral, as a jazz musician with no business success to his name and a bunch of failed entrepreneurial endeavors. And that, they gave me enough rope. I almost hung myself, $500,000. But finally, I went online and I started learning how to do digital marketing and was able to pay off. Technically, the number was $495,000 in debt within a couple of years, getting into digital marketing starting in 2008. And then I did that for 5 years. And then from there, I opened a digital agency. I scaled the digital agency. Along the way, I had a couple e-commerce stores. I started an online direct sales company. I had a number of businesses along for about a 10-year run that was a complete and total turnaround from the previous 10 years, where now I'm making good money. I'm building this life. I paid off all my debt. I start doing investing. And finally, in 2018, I exited my digital agency, had a nice, it was a modest exit. It was a multiple 7-figure exit. And I'm sort of like, camped out in life. Like, okay, what am I going to do now? I'm 39. I could technically retire at a reasonable level of comfort if I wanted to. But instead I decided, well, geez, if a broke, basically homeless jazz musician 10 years ago can now be effectively retired, who dropped out of high school, if I can achieve that, maybe I can help other people achieve their dreams too. Frankly, people that have probably done more of the right things than I have, according to what they were supposed to do. And so I started putting out all this content about how the modern economy works and the entrepreneurial opportunity, and this thing that I had developed over the years called the life operating system of kind of how to put it all together with what I call the 3 Ps. And then the 4th P, physical, personal, and professional growth. And the 4th P ultimately is finding your purpose. Although that concept kind of emerged for me, because ultimately what I realized is my purpose on this earth is to evangelize and educate about and empower around this opportunity to live a different kind of life and have what an entrepreneur really is, what entrepreneurship really means, which people think entrepreneurship means owning a business. But if you actually know what the word means in French, it means to have an adventure. An entrepreneur is an adventurer. And I think life is meant to be an adventure. And I think that that's the key to human fulfillment. I know we're on the Human Impact podcast.
Yeah, well, this is what we're here to talk about, Jeff.
Yeah. So anyway, now I teach that, with ENTRE Institute, and we've helped hundreds of thousands of people at least be exposed to it. In terms of our training, we've helped tens of thousands actually really go after it fully. About 10% of the people that come kick the tires actually decide to buy the car here. But, that's my movement in the world, is to try to create more adventurers that are making a positive impact.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. I sort of toy with the idea of the word pioneers, because I think that the ones that I tend to work with like to be pioneers. They might not recognize they are. We don't mean knocking down every single door it's never been done again, because it's incredibly hard. But they just have a mindset of doing things differently, like wanting to not follow the constraints of what they've seen in life and actually have that degree of freedom. But, to your point, a lot of people think freedom, they chase financial freedom first. And obviously being financial free and having wealth accumulation is very important because it gives us choices, but it doesn't give us the ultimate freedom, which is the mental freedom, which is what we're all actually looking for. And I was, if you think of your friends or your colleagues who have got to a point in time where they are financially free, they're not really having to worry about it anymore, and you ask them what they want, they're not really interested. Well, the ones who are still interested in wealth accumulation, probably on the wrong track. But otherwise, when they really talk at a deep level, at a soul level, it's, I want freedom. I want to be back in love with my business again. I want the creativity I once had that has got lost in the messy middle of doing whatever I'm doing. It's that they're seeking. The finance, the money is just the consequence of getting that freedom, that mental freedom.
Yeah, I think all anybody ever really wants is a feeling. That's what literally the word want means. It's like, I'm feeling I'm feeling desire, but like the feeling, a negative feeling is a longing for a positive feeling to replace it. Like, it's like, and so if people are wanting this feeling, I was having this conversation with somebody earlier, and actually I happen to have here on my phone the top 5 biggest regrets of the dying. This is based on a palliative care doctor who talked to thousands of people as they were passing away. And they all speak to what we all want. It's just that at the end of life, we're no longer constrained by the idea of having to build for the future. Protect and prepare for the future. At the end of life, when the freest we ever are is when we have no more future to be worried about, right? And in that moment, we find out what we wanted all along, which was, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life that others expected of me. That is the number one regret of the dying. Yeah. And for some reason, I was fortunate enough to commit to that when I was 16 and not at 85 or whenever a lot of people have this moment. Number 2 is I wish I hadn't worked so hard, which you look at the world today, we are conscripted. I mean, basically the reason I evangelize entrepreneurship is not because I believe everybody should own a business. And actually, I know I'm a little bit meandering here.
We can come back I'll bring you back to that. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think this is actually an important point, is you talked about the type of people that are naturally entrepreneurs, like the pioneers, the innovators, the mold breakers, right? And I would say what I actually am doing is I'm not so much in service to that group, although we have a lot of wonderful resources that can support that group. But that group is already calling up Y Combinator. That group is already working on their business plan. That group is already probably making some non-traditional choices to chase a vision. I'm talking to the big fat middle. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, the only thing I was going to say about that is the difference between, I think you're right, there are two groups. There's the one who's already out there doing it, but there's another group of pioneers who have got this incredible sense of mission and adventure. However, life has crushed them to the extent that they don't have the confidence to go and be the pioneer that they want to be. And there's incredibly creative ideas. They're very strong, passionate people. They just need a lift to know you've got this, you can go and do that. I think that's a very powerful group of people.
Yeah. And that group, I mean, I would argue that, yeah, that's actually the group that I was about to talk about. Call it the big fat middle of people in this world that are fundamentally dissatisfied and unfulfilled. And that's a statistically validated statement. The General Social Survey has been done every year since 1972, and Americans are more unhappy, more dissatisfied than ever. There's a metric in psychology called the life satisfaction index, and we're more unsatisfied than ever. Like it's, 81% of humans, well, actually this was a US based study, but 81% of Americans believe that life has a purpose, and only 6% are actually even working on living theirs, or even think about it one time per year or more. Like most people, we believe that there's this purpose to life. We just don't think it applies to us anymore, because to your point, it got crushed out of us. I actually think the type of person that most people think they are, let's say on the adventurousness scale, right? You have your quadrants of personality types, right? Your analysts, your controllers, your promoters, and your supporters. I actually think that in a very real way, that the way human personalities are organized have everything to do with when and how their adventurous spirit was crushed out of them. If your adventurous spirit got crushed out of you at 3 years old by dominant, abusive parents, and then you immediately recognized your primary crisis of your life became feeling out of control, then you likely ended up a controller as an adult. If your adventurousness was crushed out of you in a different way, let's say at school, where you were mocked, or you were shunned, or you were shamed for being unique and having maybe doing something that the kids they laughed at or something. And then from there, you said, okay, popularity, it's going to be about charm. It's going to be about winning people over. I'll go along with the crowd, but I'll become this like great promoter of whatever the crowd is invested in. Then you probably as an adult became a promoter, right? Like it all sources, but my premise is that we're all an adventurer at heart. Like look at you will not find a child on this earth that wants to sit there and balance a checkbook. Every child is an adventurous spirit. And when and how that gets beat out of us is who we become as adults. And so all I'm trying to do is reawaken the adventurous spirit that I feel sits inside of most, if not every human.
Yeah.
That I think is part and parcel of being a human. It's why we're a human. I mean, the existence of human beings is itself an evolutionary anomaly that doesn't actually have like a biological answer. Like literally, when you understand how ridiculous human beings are as a biological organism, did you know that relative to other mammals, when you look at the gestative state at which a human infant is born, we are born only about halfway through the development cycle of other mammals relative to when they're born. Like if you've ever seen a baby horse or a baby giraffe, they plop out of the womb and they're wobbly, but they stand up.
Yeah. Otherwise they get killed.
They can walk, right? We're born so early and so vulnerable. Do you know why?
No.
Because the human head is so big relative to the size of the body, and frankly, relative to the size of a woman's pelvis and birth canal, that if we stayed in the womb any longer than 9 months, we would literally split our mothers in half when they tried to birth us.
Wow.
Because our heads are so big. That is why we're born at 9 months, so vulnerable, even with our mushy skulls, so that we can even get through the opening, right? And so you're like, why? That we're a perversion of nature. We're an anomaly to the laws of evolutionary biology for mammals. Why are humans, let's call it God. Let's just use that as a placeholder. I believe in God, but like, if you want to call it God or source or creation or
whatever. Yeah.
Whatever set this evolutionary biological process in motion, why would it create a species that this is a provocative thing to say, where basically every single baby has to be aborted midterm to not kill the host. That doesn't sound like evolution, but being very efficient. But the reason is because for whatever reason, we were meant to have really big heads. So why were we meant to have really big heads? Because we were meant to have really big frontal cortexes in our brain, which predominantly allows for what? It allows for vision and allows for communication. We have imagination that is based on the ability to see things that don't currently exist in the world. And we have communication abilities, this incredibly evolved vocal and language apparatus that is literally, the human brain would be small enough that none of what I'm saying would apply if you got rid of imagination and language.
Well, I've got someone, I was talking to a neuroscientist, professor of neuroscience on my show 2 days ago, who mapped the human brain. He's a good one for your show, right? He's 76. Okay. He's also an environmental activist. He's just written a fiction book. Very interesting man, but he's a scientist, not a doctor. And what we're talking about exactly on this point is that the closest structural anatomical brain that we comparatively to a primate is a chimpanzee. We have a bigger brain, so we're able to solve more complex problems, right? However, we don't have a big enough brain, in his view, to solve the problems that we've created as human beings. And it's his well when we talk about the environment. Interestingly, he doesn't believe we'll be here in more than 1,000 years because from a psychological, human behavioral, evolutionary perspective and the way that our leadership and politicians are set up, we simply will not look up. We're so egotistical and not community driven. We will ultimately, the planet will shake us off and we'll be done and we'll just be, part of history. David Attenborough talks about that as well. However, winding us back a little bit, we talked about brain and mind. And in his view, the brain makes all the decisions. The mind is just the narrator of the story, right? But the brain makes its decisions on what it's already learned. So if we want to change it, we have to put it into a different learning pattern. And the way we do that is environment. So if we look at, I'm sure you'd understand this, and I think some of the audience will, epigenetics. So about 5 to 6% of chronic conditions now in the world are linked to genetics. The rest is epigenetics. So like 94% of chronic conditions are epigenetics, which means the patterns and behaviors and environment we're growing up and living in. And I think business is the same. If you have an environment which the business is not able to thrive, the owner can't thrive, the people can't thrive, there's no communication, or we lose our creativity, that environment, those epigenetics begin to impact the nature and structure of the business. And so the most critical thing that we can do to change our lives, I mean, yours is about whole life transformation in business and life, right? This is what ENTRE's, the format is creating the environment that allows us to use this incredible prefrontal cortex that we have and us as a sentient being to see everything around us and then be able to influence change. Because otherwise what happens is we get crushed, we get into a very linear binary mindset. We lose our creativity, we lose that freedom, we lose our mental clarity. And basically then we try and control the crap out of everything in order to make it work. And that's where the system falls down, right?
Yeah. I mean, and that story, you just told a meta story that has 8 billion different variations in 8 billion different human lives on this earth and 120 billion different lives that have ever lived. Right. And so, that's essential. And I love that you mentioned environment. One of the main concepts we teach is around what does it actually take to successfully redirect your life through action. And we call them the 3 legs of successful action. And it's knowledge, environment, and resources. And one of the challenges in this world is there's a paradigm that knowledge is how you change. You just go, you learn about a new thing, and then presumably you'll start doing different things and you'll get different results in life. And yet, you know, when I became an affiliate marketer in 2008, the first program I affiliated for was an online education platform, the same one that I had learned from. And I started going, oh my gosh, this online business stuff is amazing. Everybody come learn this new stuff like I am and change your life like I am. And eventually I ended up promoting financial education, marketing education, business education, personal development education. But I always was promoting education products because I'm a self-taught person, right? And as an affiliate. And I literally, when I look back on that 5 years, I actually did an analysis, and to the best of my ability, based on follow-up, based on feedback, like I would survey my list and whatnot. I mean, I enrolled during my 5 years as an affiliate marketer, I enrolled give or take 150,000 people into various online education programs. They weren't my program. I was just if people don't know what an affiliate is, it's just like a referral partner, right? I would put people into these programs. I'm pretty sure that I had about a 99% failure rate in terms of people getting the results that they desired when they joined the program. And so that's actually why I got out of being an affiliate marketer. I was like, I don't want to, I know I'm promoting great courses and great programs and great platforms, but I don't want to be involved in anything where 99% of my customers, even though they're not technically my customers, they're my referrals.
Yeah.
But still they took my recommendation, and 99% of them are not going to end up getting what they intended to pay for. Admittedly, it was their own fault usually, because I promoted good programs, but that's when I went and started an agency. But that was when I learned, like, damn, knowledge ain't enough, because I'm promoting programs that provide great knowledge, but what's missing? And so years later, 5-10 years later, when I decided I wanted to create my own education platform, I didn't go, oh, okay, let me build a great knowledge platform. I said, okay, let me start with knowledge and now really try to understand what else a platform needs to have for people to be successful. And that's where the 3 legs of action evolved. That environment and resources are every bit, if not more important than knowledge. Knowledge, frankly, is the cheapest thing to get online. You can get most of it on YouTube if you know where to look.
Yeah, and knowledge without application is completely, like if you'd gone to the library and you'd read every single one of those books, but you'd gone home and gone to the mall and gone shopping every day, it would have been a waste of time. Like, you've got to actually do something with the knowledge. And I think one of the challenges in online education, particularly when these large events and massive seminars, 10, 20,000 people, we all know the ones we're talking about, and they're incredibly inspirational and motivational with a lot of content. Trouble is people walk out and they don't know what to do. How do I apply this to my life today? And I think one of the biggest challenges is the people actually want someone who sits on their shoulder and says, this is how you take that into your business, into your world, into your environment, because the coursework can provoke thought and teach, but it can't necessarily apply it to every situation, because you can't think of every situation. It's fluid. And so,
sorry. Didn't mean to
no. And so, when you do this and you take people on these retreats, these personal development retreats, this is immersive education. There's a difference between something which is taught and something which is immersive.
Yeah. And it's holistic, and it's multidimensional, and it's reinforced through multiple sensory channels. I mean, at the end of the day, when people say, like, because people hear my story and it's like, guy dropped out of high school, I self-taught jazz musician, I failed at the number was 11. I failed at 11 different businesses in my 20s. I got in all this debt. I became a digital marketer back before the time of ClickFunnels, before the time, we have a software called ENTREsoft. Before any of these funnel builders existed, you had to learn to code to create web pages. So I was a self-taught coder, self-taught web, I'm pretty terrible web designer, but whatever it was I've done, I taught myself, right? And people always hear the story and they're like, dude, how did you keep going? How did you have the grit and the stamina to keep doing this? And really the belief in yourself.
Yeah.
to keep going and going and going and not just throw in the towel and go, man, it would just be easier if I did what they had told me I should have done in the beginning, which is just get a job, right? And ultimately, it comes down to currency. And forgive me, I lost a little bit train of my thought because remind me what you said right before I started saying this, because I was going to connect it.
Well,
I'm embarrassed in front
what
of your
we
audience,
were talking about is immersive education. So when you talk about the retreats and that side of it,
yeah. Sorry. Okay. So when I tried to understand, because that's it took me 5 years as an affiliate marketer to finally understand that promoting online education programs to other people, they're not getting the result that I got.
Yeah.
Right. And why? Well, it's probably the same reason that people think that my story is insane, of like dropping out and being a self-taught musician. And I mean, literally, I taught myself piano 12, 14 hours a day for 3 years before I was good enough to audition to get into a university level program. And it took me 2 years to even start getting gigs. So like every day I'm playing for hours and hours and hours on this belief that there's this possibility for me. How did I keep it going? And what I realized is that that's what I actually had to solve for. If I wanted to help people be successful with these opportunities, it's not how to connect them with the knowledge. That's what I'd been doing back when I was an affiliate marketer to a 99, greater than 90. I mean, I was a member of a platform back then that had 40,000 members, like that original affiliate marketing platform that I had learned from and that I also promoted. At one point, this was actually what did me in. That company invited me because I was one of their top affiliates. And I also, they knew I was a, pretty sane, intelligent person, which is actually unusual in the world of affiliate marketing. God bless you guys, but you're freaking nuts. They were like, hey, we'd like you to come in and assist with helping operations of this company. And I did operational consulting and I got access to their records. And I saw that out of 40,000 students, from what I could tell, roughly 100 were making any money.
Which is actually, for the audience, I know they'll think it's horrific. It's not unusual, right?
It's not unusual. No.
You'll see affiliate marketers spruiking how I made $100,000 yesterday and $200,000 5 days ago, but they've actually had to do, if they have, and it's genuine, and it's not always genuine, they've probably had to do what you do, which is 10 years of 12 to 14-hour days to understand how to get themselves to a place where they could go and put that. Because as you said, when I was on your show, it is absolute BS to say you can make 10 grand in 30 days from X. It's like, there might be somebody who does that. There may be just one person who's managed to pull it off because they've got networks, they've got relationship equity, they've got all this other stuff. But to everyone, no, it's fast cash does not exist. You got to work damn hard for it.
Well, yeah, when you understand that money is just the natural, it's the natural remuneration. It's the thing that's on the other side for which we exchange value.
Yeah.
Then, like, if you want to make $10,000 in 30 days, you don't go, oh, how do I make $10,000 in 30 days? You go, okay, how do I create $10,000 worth of value and exchange it with the market in 30 days?
Yeah.
And unless you already have a lot of momentum and like you said, relationship capital or knowledge equity or something that you've probably spent a lot of time accumulating up to that point, you're not going to have anything of sufficient value in 30 days to exchange with the market for that amount of money. Yeah. Right. Like, and when you understand that that's what business actually is, all of that stuff starts to sound as ridiculous as it is. But my point is, ENTRE Institute, the platform now that we've had, hundreds of thousands of students enroll in, and tens of thousands actually go and launch and build businesses with us, was based on one simple question, which was, what was the difference between me when I started and the 150,000 people that had 99.9% failure rates, or whatever that number was, or within that community? What was the difference between the 100 affiliates that were making money and the 39,900 that weren't? And when you start to, and this is what's so maddening, but also exciting about the question, is we're not talking about professional athletics here. We're not saying, well, what's the difference between the tiny fraction of all people who play basketball who actually make the NBA and everybody else? Because the answer to that question is 99% genetics. It's
and practice. I mean, if you look at
okay, maybe it's 80% genetics and 20% work ethic.
Yeah.
But it's still like, I will offer this up. I think I can work about as hard as any human on earth. Like I would literally stand next to David Goggins and be like, bro, I know we focused on different things in our life, but I genuinely believe that I can work as hard as you. But that doesn't mean I ever had a chance to play professional basketball.
No,
because I don't have the genes.
Yeah.
But that's not true of entrepreneurial success. Entrepreneurial success is something that is possible for 98% of humans. Like, now, is it probable? No, it's probably only probable for about 1% of humans. But why? Because of environment and resources, not knowledge. The knowledge is out there, but the environment, the social connection, the reinforcement, us being the average of the 5 people we spend the most time around, our life experience, our family of origin, our beliefs that we formed with in our first 10 years of life and didn't even know, but we never question them now because we don't even understand that they're the reasons we're doing all the things that we're doing and that we think all the things about ourselves. And like all of that is open to challenge if you just pull it out in the open. And then you say, well, damn, that sounds like a lot of work. Why would I want to work that hard? Why would I want to challenge these beliefs? Why would I want to understand myself and do the work, the hard work well enough to change what's actually possible for my life? Well, remember when you were a kid and you dreamed of what you wanted for your life? That dream is now impossible because of who you've decided you are.
Oh, your identity, who you show up as every day, who you want to be.
And I'm not trying to change you. I'm just trying to change what's possible for you because you're coming to me saying you're dissatisfied with what you have. Yeah.
And also let's also shift some emphasis on what entrepreneurship means. If we look at the constructs of, say, migration, immigrants, refugees, they come to a country, they don't speak the language, they might have been professionals in another country, like they might have been successful, and they've had to give everything up in horrific circumstances to come to a new country and start again. And why do we see so many migrants being corner shop owners? Like it would otherwise be the construct is you can't do that because you don't speak the language, you don't know anyone, but there's a drive and determination to put food on the table, to create and to give back into the community as well. Why are they so often people who are migrants as opposed to people who were born in that country? Because they've got an ethic which goes way above everybody else, but also goes against the notion of what's possible to achieve, but they prove it. And there's this concept, which I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on, which I call noble purpose, which is entrepreneurship is not Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg or, owning a bank or, be whatever it happens to be. Yeah, those are just examples of innovation, incredible innovation. But entrepreneurship is owning your freedom, owning a business. If a noble purpose is, if you want to have a corner shop which serves your local 5 street community, that is as noble as it is to send rockets to Mars. There is no difference in that. It's only how we perceive it. But so many people think that entrepreneurship has to be something which the whole world is aware of, and this ego and identity, it isn't. It's just being able to create something which you can sell to someone else or serve to somebody else. It's as simple as that, isn't it?
Yeah, I would actually even take it a step further. And I would say entrepreneurship is just a commitment to living a life of adventure and to doing whatever you have to do to keep that commitment from being compromised. And for most people, that's going to involve having some sort of business so that they can have financial autonomy, so that they can keep living the life of their choosing. And honestly, and usually if you say, well, okay, well, why doesn't everybody do that? At least if Jeff's hypothesis is that everybody is designed to do that, we're created to do that. Well, why doesn't everybody do that? It's because we get wooed by the 3rd level of Maslow's hierarchy, which is to belong. We want to belong. We want to fit in. And so we end up in, choosing out of being different and taking risk. And the best thing, I mean, we do, as grotesque as it is, we do immigrants a favor by being such, racist, biased, prejudiced assholes and marginalizing them and not immediately absorbing them into society. I'm saying we, the collective we of humanity, right? Like we do them a favor, because when we deny them the opportunity of belonging to whatever country they just migrated to, we actually remove from them the temptation to compromise their autonomy and their independence and their pursuit of freedom, because they don't have the option to trade all that for belonging. So they go, well, screw, I can't belong here anyway. Hey guys, we're on our own. Like, let's start businesses. Let's be entrepreneurs. Let's be adventurers. Let's take care of each other. Let's focus on our families, because this society is rejecting us anyhow.
And the biggest problem with that is that the society that rejects them doesn't learn from them, because these people have incredible amounts to offer, but they're not sharing it outside because they feel unsafe sharing it outside, or rejected from sharing it outside.
Yeah. And to be honest, I didn't immigrate to this country, but the day I dropped out of high school in protest to the education system, I started living in very real ways the life of an immigrant, which is rejection by everyone around me. I removed myself from the possibility of belonging because I vocalized how I felt about the track that everybody was pretending to like being on. And from that point forward, I was on my own. And the thing about jazz, like I didn't know it at the time, but damn, I picked the right thing. If I had decided to become a classical musician, my life would have been completely different, because classical music is doing what's on the page.
Yeah.
Playing what somebody else wrote so that you can be a functional, you can be a tool in creating someone else's sonic vision. Chopin had a vision, and a vision of how sound could be organized in time over a window of time. And he wrote down all these cues and these marks on how to make that vision come to reality. And then he subcontracted you, the performer, with the promise of something beautiful to be his tool to bring his vision to life by perfectly executing the sound suggestions that he gave you on a piece of paper. That's classical music. Jazz says, yo, what's the tune? What's the underlying harmony? You know, although subject to change, because we're going to play with it as we go. How fast you want to play it? What key you want to play it in? You know, get a few guys together. Let's make some sound that nobody's ever heard before. And every time out, it's made up on the spot according to a certain set of agreements between the musicians that I just described, a certain set of agreements with universal laws of Western tonal music. And within that, you're free and you make it up as you go. That is how I learned to be an entrepreneur. That is how I learned to be an adventurer, or that is how I manifested my already true nature as an adventurer. And that is why I'm comfortable out on the high wire of risk, making it up in real time and not going, wait, shit, wait, what note am I supposed to play? What page are we on? What measure is this? Wait, where's the sheet music? Somebody tell me what to do, which is how most people go through life.
And, you know, the interesting thing about that, Jeff, is if we look at that life and the passion you have for that, is that business in itself can crush that out of you as well, even when it's your own. Because when that complete creativity that inspires you to set it up, then you get stuck into operations, or you have to take a back seat and let someone else do it, and there's no trust there, or there's too much trust. And, you know, what I do, as you know, is specialize in people who get stuck in the messy middle of their businesses, where their creativity is no longer nurtured and flourished, and therefore you go and look for something else to do. And that's one of the really hard constructs of entrepreneurship, is to know what's still going on around you and still being involved in that, even when your creativity is beginning to be diminished. You think, oh, well, I'll sell it, or I'll exit it, or I'll do something else with it because I'm no longer fired up by the business. That, I think, is one of the biggest challenges that any entrepreneur faces in that like 6 to 8 year period in when it's not so beautiful anymore.
Well, so in the Bible, obviously it says that love of money is the root of all evil, right? And so when you ask what is, you know, what is evil, what is money, what is love, right? And like that quote, that gets quoted a lot by people that are not ostensibly Christian. They're not making a Christian statement. They're just making what is generally accepted to be a truth statement, right?
Yeah.
The love of money is the root of all evil. And that's what's wrong with America is we're all greedy capitalists and we love money too much. And that's why America's evil. You live in Australia. Maybe you tell me if that's what they say about us, but
I'm everywhere. Doesn't make any difference.
Yeah, exactly. And so here's the thing about that statement. First of all, we've changed what words mean a lot in modern society. We quote ancient wisdom, but we don't use ancient definitions of terms. So ancient wisdom ends up meaning different things now, right? Like even the word fulfillment, like, oh, I want a life of fulfillment. And we think that means being able to do whatever I want. And we don't know that the word fulfillment comes from the Old English word fulfillon, which means destiny or prophecy. And it's not doing whatever you want. It's doing what you were put on this earth to do. It's the fulfillment of your prophecy. And so again, we hearken to these ancient concepts, but we've changed what the words mean. And so for the love, putting the love of money, what love in ancient times, it was a given, especially in ancient Christian times, like the people who created that language or that phrasing in whatever it was, Aramaic or ancient Greek, love meant God. Love was our experience of God. And so when we talk about the love of money, what we're actually talking about is putting money above God. It's reassigning that spiritual connection, that depth of connection and meaning, and reassigning it from God to money is the root of all evil. And so fast forward to your description of a business owner, how entrepreneurship can actually crush our creativity. It can crush our joy. It can crush our fulfillment. That's because when you're scared about money, you make it more important than God, or you make it more important than your created purpose, or you make it more important than fun, or you make it more important than love and connection, or whatever your spiritual life represents in your life, which maybe, we live in a diverse time. But as soon as, because you're scared in a business, or because you think that the point of a business is only to make money, and you make that more important than those other things, then immediately that business becomes a legitimate force for evil in your life. And that is why you have such a destroyed relationship with it. And you go seek Ed Andrew to help you put it back together.
Well, yeah. And I think, as I said, it goes back to mission. Like when we set up a business on day one, we have a very clear mission it's not about creating money. It's about service. I have a product, I have a service, and I want to help someone with it because I believe this is better than everyone else is getting at the moment, right? That's the mission. And generally that mission gets accomplished in the first few years of business. What we don't do is we don't set a new one. And some people, that mission is escaping poverty. And they did it 15 years ago, but they're still attached to that place. They haven't left it. And
they're still doing the business to make money, even though they don't actually need the money for what they needed it for before.
Well, the thing is they still believe they need the money, even though when you unpack it, the money equation is already solved. It's just that the attachment to it hasn't been solved.
Yeah. So I want to propose something that's counterintuitive, because I literally watched it happen in my own business. Which is that when you making money the reason to do business, even when you actually need the money, one of two things happens. Either you make money, but it doesn't fulfill you, or you just don't make money. But what doesn't happen is you make money and it fulfills you. If the point of the business was to make money, I don't believe you'll make money and feel good about it in a business over time. If the point of a business is to serve, or to create, or to solve people's problems, or to be your profession, we use the term profession of what you do, but the word profession means what you profess, what you stand for in the world. Yeah. If your business is your profession of your viewpoint, your stance, your belief, your ethic in the world, then you have the only chance to both make a lot of money and be very fulfilled in business. And so that's the danger of needing money when you're running a business. And I watched this happen in my own company, because when I wrote my book right there on that shelf, I stepped away from being the day-to-day CEO and leader of my business, and the management in my absence ran the business They didn't have my vision. They didn't have my spiritual calling. They didn't have my intention and design around the business. And they did what they thought good business people are supposed to do, which is run the business to make money. And a year ago, I basically had to come back and save the company because it had gone so off track. Because, I mean, it's like I have seen this happen. And since I have now been running the company where I go, look, yes, profit is a condition for survival. So of course we will do that. Yeah, we will. That is a concern. That is a KPI, how much profit we make. But it cannot be the primary KPI, because as soon as you elevate money above God, purpose, love, mission, spirit, heart, whatever you want to call it, i.e., then that becomes, your business becomes the root of evil.
And I think, to me, that's why I am so passionate about teaching entrepreneurship in the sense of abundant entrepreneurship, which is health, wealth, family, relationships, everything. Like, it's abundance means everything. And it doesn't mean greed. It just means you have the capability of having everything. What you want to do with it is entirely up to you. Because what we see is in the corporate world, it's only about profit. It is how much more can we crank that needle at the expense of everybody else. And that, I think, is what I see. And it's like, from a social justice perspective, it's not right. It doesn't make sense. No one's happy. The shareholders may be a little bit happy, but everybody else is basically striving for their extra buck, the extra 5 hours a week. It's not. It's self-serving, but actually it doesn't help anyone at the end of the day. It's counterproductive. It's counterintuitive.
Yeah, it's zero-sum capitalism, where everybody's getting what they can get with whatever they need to take from someone else, so that other person can't get it, so that they can. Like, it's binary. It's I win, you lose. And I'm not completely enrolled in like the whole like shareholder versus stakeholder economics model, which is like I forget that guy's name that runs the World Economic Forum, but I would say I'm much more akin to stakeholder capitalism, which is how do we create, or I would say the reason I'm not totally aligned with the way stakeholder capitalism as a movement is defined is because it's not totally aligned with what I'm about to say. But underneath it, what I think they're going for is how do we create a win-win approach to business, where it takes care of the employees, it takes care of the executives, it takes care of the shareholders, it takes care of the vendors, it takes care of the customers, it takes care of the world, and it has this like multifaceted positive impact where nobody has to lose for somebody to win. And that I agree with. That's what I now am in a unique position to say, and I'll say this to the audience to hopefully inspire some people. And I'm not saying come join ENTRE. I'm saying consider a life of adventure that's built around win-win positive impact philosophy, which is like, I'm now in the unique position of having seen tens of thousands of people decide they want to do this with their lives and change their lives with this way of being and this way of working. And I mean, go to ENTRE's Trustpilot page. We have over 1,000 reviews and 4.8 stars. And that may sound like I'm beating my chest, say, look how great we are. But don't just go, I'm not saying, don't ignore the stars and ignore the number of reviews. Go read the stories of people saying, I have lost weight. I have a better relationship with my kids. My wife and I are speaking again. My family understands me and supports my dreams. Oh yeah, I also started a business and I'm in my second year and I'm, I just made my first $10,000 or like whatever. It's physical and personal and professional wins, all in the context of I'm finally realizing what it feels like to live a life of purpose. Like that's the invitation, is to change the way you show up in the world. But it starts with like accepting that if money is the most important thing, you may get it, but it'll be at the cost of fulfillment.
Yeah, and I think, look, there are many successful business owners who can go there, and we've talked about this before, like 10, 20 years in the business, not having that fulfillment, not having that sense of soul, but it will catch up with them. Eventually, they're going to lose relationships. They'll start losing actually the thing they crave the most, which is the money, because they're starting to spiral. So you can do it. So when people say, oh, well, that's just not true, Ed, look at X, Y, and Z. Yeah, look at them. But you ask them, do the kids talk to them? Does the wife talk to them? Do their friends talk to them? The answer is probably no.
Right. And yeah, and exactly. So like, even if so-and-so made a lot of money, why wouldn't you, like, at the end of the day, what do you actually want? You don't want money, you want a feeling.
Yeah, that's from what you said right at the beginning. And the other thing, like, is I talk to a lot of people, I'm sure you do, and they say, when I've got 10 million, I'm out, or when I've got 20 million, I'm out. And I say, well, the thing is, it's great to draw a line in the sand saying, when it no longer serves me, I'm going to go and do something else. Like, that's right. But as soon as you put a number on your abundance, you limit your potential, because as soon as what will happen is the closest you get to 8, 9, and 10, you'll never quite get there. You'll never quite allow yourself to have that, because you put a line in there. Just say, I can have whatever I want, and I'm going to go and work for that. And if I want to give it all away, that's up to me. It's my choice. Right? That's not greed. That's just saying abundance is open to everyone on the planet. It's up to you how you want to deal with that. Be philanthropic about that.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of a certain amount of money, again, you're using money as a reductive proxy for a feeling.
Yeah.
What you're saying is, when I get to 10 million, I think I'm going to feel secure. I think I'm going to feel accomplished. I think I'm, hopefully I still have all the relationships and all these other things in place that I'm going to feel connected to. And then at that point, I'm going to want to focus more on that feeling, and I'm going to feel safe in doing so. But if you had said, when I have that feeling, it's not when I have X, I'm out. It's when I have that feeling, I'm in.
Yeah. Well, right? The thing is, we want to be in. We want the feeling the whole time. I mean, obviously, there's going to be struggle in that process. Struggle has to come before success. It's like the flow state starts with struggle. It doesn't start with win, right?
Right.
So I think that it's understanding. That's why I think mission is so important, because if you reset it every 12 or 18 months, you're understanding, what am I trying to strive for here? What am I trying to pull off? And when things become aligned with that, you're then not chasing, because when you start chasing, that's when the problem occurs, as you rightly say. Now, Jeff, how do people find you? How do they
I appreciate the question. Well, I mean, based on my life lately, apparently they just opened their Instagram feed. I was in a hotel the last couple of days. I've been staying in Vegas, and both the girl that checked me in at the hotel and the guy standing at the bottom of the elevators both were like, "Oh, I see you in my Instagram feed all the time." So apparently lately that's just what you do. But no, in all seriousness, JeffLernerofficial.com is my website. From there, you can get to my book, you can get to my podcast. If you're interested in exploring an entrepreneurial life, you can get to ENTRE Institute. I host these life design workshops where you'll actually come spend a week with me and my wife, and we'll coach you on installing an entire new life operating system into your life to take success from being possible to probable. There's a lot of different things you can get there. So yeah, JeffLernerofficial.com.
Fantastic. And I love the life operating system. I call it the human operating system, but it's the same. It's the same thing. Jeff, thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure having you today.
Oh, Ed. Yeah, it's been a blast, man. I look forward to continuing the relationship, and it's been a great time getting to spend this with your audience. I'm grateful to you and to them.
Thanks so much. That's it from me, and if you love the show, don't forget to like and subscribe. That way more people will hear the show. If you want the show notes, everything is over on my website, edandrew.com. Talk to you again soon. Take care.